Close your eyes and imagine a woman whose beauty was so striking that it caught the attention of gods, mortals, and kings alike. This woman was Medusa, one of the most famous figures in Greek mythology, yet her story is far from simple. It is not merely a tale of terror. It is a story of transformation, injustice, power, and survival. A story that continues to resonate thousands of years after it was first told. Medusa's tale teaches lessons about the cruelty of the gods, the vulnerability of mortals, and the power that can arise from even the darkest circumstances. Medusa was originally a mortal, described in ancient texts as exceptionally beautiful. Ovid's Metamorphoses gives us one of the most detailed accounts of her life before she became a monster. She was a priestess in the temple of Athena, dedicated to the goddess of wisdom and war. Her beauty was considered a gift, but it also brought danger, envy, and attention that would change her life forever. In some accounts, it was Poseidon, god of the sea, who violated her within the sacred walls of Athena's temple. This act of violence, shocking and cruel, left Medusa both traumatized and vulnerable. But it was Athena herself who punished Medusa, not Poseidon. Athena transformed Medusa's hair into venomous snakes and cursed her gaze, making it so that anyone who looked directly at her would be turned to stone. The punishment was severe, and many scholars argue it reflects the ancient world's tendency to blame victims rather than perpetrators, highlighting a grim lesson about justice, power, and gender in mythology. Medusa became a Gorgon, a terrifying creature feared across the world. Unlike her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, who were immortal, Medusa was mortal, which made her story particularly tragic. Her curse turned her into a monster in the eyes of the world. Yet in many ways, she retained her humanity, sorrow, and intelligence. Medusa was hunted relentlessly, her image becoming a symbol of fear and destruction. She could not walk among mortals safely. Any inadvertent glance could petrify a soldier, a sailor, or even someone who did not intend her harm. This isolation, combined with the injustice of her punishment, made her both feared and sympathetic, a figure simultaneously monstrous and tragic. The story of Medusa is inseparable from the tale of Perseus, one of the great Greek heroes. Perseus was sent on a mission that seemed impossible: to bring back the head of Medusa. King Polydectes, who sought to marry Perseus's mother, devised this quest as a way to rid himself of Perseus, assuming the task would end in failure or death. To succeed, Perseus received divine assistance, a common motif in Greek myths. Hermes provided him with winged sandals to travel swiftly. Hades lent his helm of invisibility. Athena gifted a reflective bronze shield, and a sharp sword was supplied to execute the act with precision. Using the shield as a mirror to avoid Medusa's gaze, Perseus approached and, while Medusa slept, decapitated her. From her blood sprang two remarkable beings: Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a giant or warrior depending on the version. Even in death, Medusa's story was not one of defeat. It became the source of new life and mythological influence. The narrative of Medusa carries deep symbolism. Her transformation from mortal beauty to monstrous power reflects themes of jealousy, punishment, and transformation. Her snakes symbolize danger, protection, and the intertwining of life and death, while her gaze represents both the literal and metaphorical power of female agency, for so strong it can immobilize those who confront it. Medusa's story is often interpreted as a cautionary tale about victim blaming, divine cruelty, and the way society punishes individuals for circumstances beyond their control. Yet she is also a figure of empowerment, resilience, and even vengeance. Medusa's head, the Gorgonion, became a widespread symbol in Greek art and culture. Shields, armor, and buildings often bore the image of her head. Intended to ward off evil, soldiers carried her visage into battle to instill fear in their enemies. Over centuries, Medusa evolved from a figure of fear into a symbol of female power and survival. Modern interpretations in literature, psychology, and art frequently emphasize her role as a woman wronged by gods yet transformed into an immortal figure of strength. She is often cited in feminist discourse as a metaphor for women punished for circumstances they cannot control, and as a symbol of reclaiming agency through power. Even after Perseus flew away with the dripping prize tucked inside the cabysus, an ancient toad of goat skin still warm from her last pulse, Medusa's presence refused to be clipped. Sailors swore that the cliff cave continued to exhale a slow, mineral breath, as if the stone wolves and lions she had once petrified now guarded an invisible queen. Some claim that on nights when the moon lay sideways across the horizon, serpentine shadows still flickered on the basalt walls, braiding and unbraiding like hair in water. Others, more daring, left small offerings, barley cakes soaked in honey, locks of their own hair tied with red wool, so that her lingering spirit might turn her gaze elsewhere when their ships passed the crimson reefs of Sarpedon. Thus the monster, once the most solitary of women, became a neighborhood deity, a roadside shrine, a whispered password between fishermen who had never seen her face yet felt its weight in their chests like swallowed stone. In Athens, the story arrived on the lips of a traveling rhapsode during the first heat of summer. Children sat cross-legged in the agora, sucking pomegranate seeds, while the poet sang how the beautiful became the terrible so the terrible could become the beautiful. A few of the older boys laughed, boys who had never been told to lower their eyes, until a potter's daughter rose and quietly asked why the goddess, who protected weavers, had turned a wept-upon girl into a warning. Her question drifted over the marble steps like incense. No one answered, but the next morning someone scrawled a charcoal gorgon head on the base of Athena's statue, the tongue politely folded inside the mouth, the eyes wide and sorrowing rather than wide and raging. City cleaners washed it away before sunrise, yet the faint outline persisted, a bruise beneath white plaster, and for weeks Athenian brides tucked small mirrors into their sandals so that if they met a hostile gaze on their wedding day, they could flash back their own reflection rather than absorb it. Across the sea in Libya, the Gorgon's name was spoken only in the feminine plural, Gorgons, because it was believed she had split herself into every woman who had ever been asked to carry shame that belonged to someone else. Desert storytellers insisted that the asps who twine around the wrists of local goddesses were not snakes at all but strands of her hair released from death, curling now around the arms of those who guard oases. When a caravan master wanted to discourage bandits, he hired a veiled dancer to whirl in the firelight. The cloth across her face bore a painted mask of serpents, and the men's bravado drained into the sand like spilled wine. Afterward, the dancer retired to her tent, removed the mask, and pressed a cool palm against her own cheek, feeling the echo of a pain centuries older than her body. In that gesture, the myth crossed the blood-brain barrier of history, no longer a relic, but a reflex. Roman conquerors, never ones to waste a useful terror, carried her head on standards from Germania to Numidia. Legionaries told themselves they marched under the face of ultimate deterrence. In truth, many secretly feared that the bronze medallion swinging at the centurion's chest was a double-sided coin, one side protection, the other accusation. A young scribe attached to the 10th Legion, homesick for the olive groves of Picenum, began to compose a private epistle. To the one who was wronged, I am sorry we wear your face as armor. If ever you return, may we be turned not to stone but to salt, so at least we can dissolve in the rain. He buried the papyrus beneath a road stone. Centuries later, archaeologists unearthed it and mistook the fragment for a love letter, which, in a way, it was.